This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM. Channel 80. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Got a jam-packed show coming your way today. Make no mistake about it. I will definitely get into some NFL stuff because Jameis Winston done got himself into trouble. I shouldn't say done got himself into trouble because this incident happened more than a couple of years ago. But nevertheless, he's in the news. He's about to get himself suspended. So that is something that we will definitely be talking about here. But the story, all right, is the NBA draft. The story is the NBA draft that took place last night at the Barclays Center inside of Brooklyn, New York. Okay, that is the story. And when you analyze it and you break it down and you look at everything that has transpired, DeAndre Ayton out of Arizona went number one to Phoenix, as I thought. They better had taken him because that was the obvious pick. Can't teach 7-1 with those offensive skills. You just can't do it. Can't pass on him. Can't pass on him. Number two, Marvin Bagley out of Duke went to Sacramento. Some people say he's a 20-10 guy. He'll obviously have no shortage of energy. So he'll come out, he'll give you what he's got to give you. And then things got real interesting because the Atlanta Hawks had the number 3 pick, but instead of picking it for themselves, they ultimately picked it for the Dallas Mavericks because this kid out of the Euro League, all right, this kid, Luka Doncic, this 6'7" European dude who appears to be some all-purpose dude playing 4 different positions. The Atlanta Hawks drafted him, but not for themselves. What they did was they drafted him and then they swapped the pick with the Dallas Mavericks, who moved up 2 spaces from the 5th slot to the 3rd slot in the NBA draft, forfeiting a protected first-round pick in the future in the process just to get their hands on this kid Doncic. Atlanta was salivating over Trae Young out of Oklahoma. So they ended up grabbing him with the 5th overall pick anyway. He was 3rd, but he really was 5th. And there is what you have. Doncic is a Dallas Maverick, and to me, that will be the story to watch. Some people look at winners and losers of this year's draft, Dallas Mavericks. According to ESPN's own Mike Schmitz, the Mavericks are the clear winner of the night. They got arguably the top prospect in the draft. And we'll have Rick Carlisle, head coach for the Dallas Mavericks, on the show today to explain what their thinking was, why they went to the extent that they did to get this kid, and what they think he's going to bring to the table. You still got veterans in Dallas like Dirk Nowitzki, J.J. Barea, and Wesley Matthews. So they're going to help Doncic out, transitioning from international play into the NBA play. I'll ask Rick Carlisle about that. But clearly when you hear this stuff, I can't wait to see this guy Doncic play. I've never seen him play. And I've learned my lesson because when I went off about the Knicks grabbing Kristaps Porzingis years ago, everybody wanted to get on me. You said he couldn't play. I did not say that. I specifically said I had not seen Porzingis play. My issue wasn't with Porzingis' skill set. It was with the fact that I hadn't seen him play, and Phil Jackson went on the air and was telling people that he was going to be a 4 to 5 year project, as if we had 4 to 5 years to wait. I didn't know Porzingis was going to be this good because I hadn't seen him. And Phil Jackson evidently didn't know he was going to be this good because he was trying to buy himself a 4 to 5 year cushion so he could steal even more money from James Dolan. And I wasn't having it. In Doncic's case, I'm not going to go there. The reality is that as you look at this kid perform, if this kid can play, then you got yourself a player. Somehow, some way along the way, Dallas is going to have to come up with some free agents. Rick Carlisle and Mark Cuban, 2 guys. Rick Carlisle's place, I love him. He and I go back more than 20 years. I love the man. In Mark Cuban's case, I respect him. And I know him a little bit, and I like Mark. That combined with Dallas being the great city that it is, the only thing wrong with the city of Dallas is this nauseating, disgusting Dallas Cowboys fan base. Other than that, the city's phenomenal. It's a great metropolis, great people, beautiful city, no state income tax in any of those cities in Texas. Dallas is one of them. That's great. So your money goes a long way. Dallas is phenomenal. If it wasn't for their contamination on the part of Cowboys fans, they'd be all right. They really would. And let's hope that they're not contaminating the Mavs organization. These damn delusional, nauseating fans that could go 1-15 or 3-13 and go to the toilet, pass gas, and then come out of the bathroom. You know we're going to win the Super Bowl next year, right? Can't stand them. They make me sad. I hate Cowboy fans. I had to tell Jerry Jones, it's nothing against you personally. It's them damn Cowboy fans. I just can't stand them. I hate them. They make it on my nerves. Nobody gets on my nerves more than a Cowboy fan. Nobody. So if there's no shame, they can go winless and it'll still be like, how about them Cowboys? No shame. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But I digress. My point is that the Dallas Mavericks are a different animal. The Dallas Mavericks, we're going to see what happens. Some people think this kid, Doncic, is the real deal. We'll find out. I got news for you. I don't have problems with what the Knicks did. This kid, Kevin Knox, can play. Now, in a perfect world, would I have preferred Michael Porter Jr.? Yes. No, my man Jay Williams feels that way, along with various others. How could the Knicks have passed up on it? I got a better question for y'all. Y'all sure that it's good? That it's not good, rather, that the Knicks passed up on Michael Porter Jr. when Jerry West passed up on them twice? Clippers had the 12th and 13th pick in the NBA draft, and Jerry West passed up on Michael Porter Jr. twice. They had 2 picks and passed up on Michael Porter Jr. Now, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm here to tell you, Jerry West knows some damn basketball. You know, Jerry West, who went to 8 or 9 NBA finals. You know, Jerry West, the silhouette, even though it should be Michael Jordan at this point. You know, Jerry West, the executive extraordinaire who stole Shaquille O'Neal from Orlando Magic like a thief in the night, who rebuilt the Lakers, who's widely recognized as one of the great executives the game of the NBA has ever seen. You know that Jerry West who plucked the great Hubie Brown out of the ashes and reminded everybody that Hubie Brown has forgotten more basketball than most of us know? You know that Jerry West, who was a consultant and a contributing architect to Golden State's dynasty? You know that Jerry West, who's now come over to the Clippers and is a consultant at 80 years of age, who's forgotten more basketball than most of us know? That Jerry West. Do you know that guy passed up on Michael Porter Jr. twice with the 12th and the 13th pick in the draft? Why? I mean, I got to do my homework. I got to make sure I find out that it was him, as opposed to Doc Rivers or Lawrence Frank. But I'm here to tell you something right now. Jerry West knows some basketball. And if he didn't take Michael Porter, assuming he had the power to do so, if he passed to take a Michael Porter Jr. with the 12th or the 13th pick, I got to tell you something. I'm cool with the Knicks having passed up on him at number 9. Kevin Knox, Jay Williams brought up the want-to factor. Jay Williams brought up the fact that, you know, Kevin Knox doesn't seem to have had it. You know, the Knicks picked him, and that's great. We get all of that. We understand it. But at the same time, S.A., because that's what Jay Williams called me. Just like my man Shabazz in Miami calls me that, along with various others. I love it when they call me S.A. They say, hey, this guy, Kevin Knox, we don't know whether he has it or not. That's what we asking you about. We don't know about this kid. And if they're saying that, I got to pay attention to that. I really, really do. I got to look at this kid and wonder what he brings to the table. I saw him flat out ball out against West Virginia. What was that game? January 27th at West Virginia. Hit 11 and 17 shots from the field. 5 of 8 from three-point range, finished with 34 in a win at West Virginia. I got to pay attention to that. I got to pay attention to the 25 he dropped early in the year. I got to pay attention to the 23 he dropped against Arkansas, the 21 he dropped against Missouri, the 22 he dropped against Ole Miss, the 25 he dropped in the NCAA tournament, before only putting on 8 against Buffalo and then 13 against Kansas State, who they lost to, by the way. All I'm saying to you is that Kevin Knox, having the size on him that he has, kid is a legit 6'9", 215. If you're 6'9", 215 and you can shoot, I like you in a New York Knicks uniform. Porter, would I have liked him? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if Porzingis wasn't hurt. If Porzingis wasn't hurt, I'd have liked him a lot. My problem is that Porzingis was hurt, is hurt, isn't expected to be back before January of 2019. So if I draft a dude that only played 3 games in college because he had back surgery and he had hip surgery, how confident should I feel about him going a grueling 82 games during the regular season? It's a question mark for me. I'm not sure about that. I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure. And if I'm not sure, then I got to pass. Now, having said all of that, I will say this. If you are the Denver Nuggets, if you are a fan of the Denver Nuggets, okay? If you are a fan of the Denver Nuggets, I got news for you. This is not a bad day. Denver went 46-36 last year. They're a good team. They missed the playoffs on the last game of the season when they had a game at Minnesota. And obviously Minnesota was playing for the right to get in as well. So having home court advantage helped them, and they propelled them over the Denver Nuggets. But ladies and gentlemen, Gary Harris can ball. Will Barton is not a joke either. Jokic can ball. I'm here to tell you right now, Minnesota, what he was doing to Karl Anthony Towns, Jokic was flat out balling. Jamal Murray is somebody that has grown on me tremendously. I really like him. He averaged 16.7 a game last year and shot 37% from three-point range. I like Jamal Murray. I'm a fan. I wish the Knicks had him. But more importantly than anything else, you know what I like about looking at this Denver Nuggets squad? You know what I really love? They got a bunch of young thoroughbreds with moxie. They ain't scared of nothing. They're not scared. They can ball, they know it, and they come at you. Sometimes they're undersized. Sometimes experience gets in the way. Sometimes it's just better talent, but you got to beat them. They ain't going to just turn around and let you have your way with them. They don't roll like that. I look at Denver. They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in double figures. You got another 3 guys averaging at least 8 points a game. They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 guys averaging double-digit minutes. And now you just added Michael Porter Jr. to that squad. Denver's on the come up, y'all. The Denver Nuggets are on the come up. I'm telling you that right now. And you better look out for them, because I predict they're going to make the playoffs next year. I like what I'm seeing in Denver. I really, really do. And I thought Malone did a hell of a job with them last year. So it's going to be real interesting to see what happens with them. In the case of Atlanta, we all know Trae Young's that story. Here's what I like about it for Atlanta, ladies and gentlemen. We all know a whole bunch of folks migrate to the ATL because it is a lovely city. It really, really is. Excuse my stuttering. Atlanta's lovely. I'll just leave it at that. My point is, Atlanta is a fan base that damn near comes to watch the other teams play. I'm not saying they don't root for their own team. I'm not saying that when the Hawks are relevant and they're balling, that they're not out there trying to cheer their team on. But they're really a team that's coming to see everybody else, as opposed to you. And all I'm saying to you is that Trae Young might have the potential to change all that. If this brother pulls up from the parking lot and starts hitting these kind of shots with his ball handling skills, his vision, I got news for you. Trae Young, clearly Atlanta is looking to make some noise in the box office. You got to get somebody that's going to do that for you. And I think Trae Young has that kind of potential. Sexton out of Alabama might be a little bit better. And playing at Alabama, which is near Atlanta, it ain't Trae Young. Trae Young is boom or bust. That's what he is. Sexton, he's going to be good for you. Colin Sexton, he's going to be good for you. Is he going to be a superstar or not? That depends on his shot-making ability, but he's a rough rider. He's going to go after it. So it's going to be real interesting to see what happens with that. To me, my potential steal of the draft is this kid, Lonnie Walker, out of Miami, going to the San Antonio Spurs. We forgot that San Antonio does actually have a good history of developing talent. And when you look at this kid, Walker, he looks like a bigger, more athletic version of Sexton. And the things this kid is capable of doing, as fiery as he is and the way he goes after it, with him and DeJounte Murray in the backcourt for the San Antonio Spurs, we might be seeing something special for years to come. It remains to be seen whether or not indeed that's going to happen. But I'm here to tell you right now, can't ignore it. You got to pay attention to it. Because the way I'm looking at it right now, I like what I'm seeing. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's the number to call. That's 888-729-3776. Lots of stuff to get into. Dallas and Doncic, Atlanta, and Trae Young, Denver, and Michael Porter Jr. at number 14. I already brought up that, and Lonnie Walker the fourth with the number 18th pick to the San Antonio Spurs. The Indiana Pacers grabbing Aaron Holiday with the 23rd pick. That ain't bad either. That's a big-time pickup by the Pacers. They desperately need a point guard. He's a tough-minded competitor, and him playing alongside Victor Oladipo is not bad. Listen to what they say about him, because I'm reading from Mike Smith and what he had to say about it. Look at this. They call him a pit bull defender who plays bigger than his height because he's only 6'1", with a 6'7" wingspan. He's got a strong frame. He's athletic, all right? Still needs to fine-tune his decision-making and ability to play in traffic, but he's an excellent shooter off the bounce and catch. Plus, he does a great job getting downhill in space. This guy could be one of the top 2 or 3 point guards in the draft. He's special. And we all know how tough-minded his brother is, Drew Holiday, who was at the draft with him last night. We know how Drew can ball. So you got Drew, you got him. If I had a brother like Drew Holiday, not too many people would be questioning my toughness. Because if we know one thing about Drew Holiday, he's tough. He was never a scrub. He could ball when he was in Philly. He could ball now that he's in New Orleans. I'm paying attention to all of this. And oh, by the way, while we're at it, how about those 76ers? Trading the draft rights to Mikal Bridges out of Villanova for Zaire Smith. And Miami's 2021 first-round pick. Now, you got to remember, Mikal Bridges played at Villanova, always wanted to be a 76ers. 76ers draft him. I think his mama works for the organization. They still have to trade him on draft day. I was like, damn. But Zaire Smith can play. And he can defend. And when you look at him with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, they might be doing some things in the future in Philadelphia. But I gotta admit, it should inspire confidence from Sixers fans. Franchise is clearly thinking long term. Brett Brown's your interim GM. For him to make that call, give credit where credit is due. It's a brave call on his part. He did the right thing. Because they don't need Bridges as much as they need Zaire Smith. And with Boston getting Robert Williams out of Texas A&M with the number 27th pick, that's just another great move by Danny Ainge. Has the potential to be the steal of the draft. Can block shots. Is a Clint Capella type. If you're Boston, that's what you need. That's what Washington's desperately looking for, but they didn't get it. They didn't get it. They drafted this brother Troy Brown out of Oregon. I don't know why they didn't draft Robert Williams. Maybe that was a bit too high. But Washington with Gortat and Mahinmi are desperately looking for somebody that is going to be able to defend pick and roll situations, play above the rim, be active around the basket. And that ain't Gortat or Mahinmi in the nation's capital. So they need to get somebody to spell for Wall and Beal. I just don't know if that's the right pick. But I know Scott Brooks likes it. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Washing my nose, oh yeah.
I'm a shower curtain, and I do one thing. Keep water from leaking everywhere. So you see why I feel useless compared to Geico, who does so much more. Like, not only could Geico save you money, but they've been around for over 75 years. And they give you 24/7 access online, over the phone, or on the Geico app. And they've got a 97% customer satisfaction rating. They do all this while I have to listen to this chucklehead. Oh, good, he stopped.
Washing my toes.
Oh, great, an encore.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more. You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Let's get right to it. Let's go to Anthony. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Anthony? Talk to me.
Steve, big fan. Thanks for taking the call.
No problem, bro. Go ahead.
Very, very disappointed in my New York Knicks draft last night.
Mm-hmm.
As a team who cannot get any marquee free agents to even forget about sign with us. They won't even take a meeting with us, Steve.
LeBron will give Fizdale dinner. I think he'll do that.
Okay. Well, As a team that can't get anybody to sign with us, then I'll stick with that. How do you not, at number 9, when you get a kid like Michael Porter Jr., who consensus says if he wouldn't have hurt his back in the beginning of the year, would have been either a number 1 or 2 pick. That's not me making that up. That's a fact.
Let's talk about that. Let me tell you why I can listen. I'm a bit reticent about it. I'm a bit hesitant about it. I get you. You're not wrong, Anthony. My problem is that the brother only played 3 games in college because of a back and hip injury. And you're asking the Knicks to draft him at the same time that Porzingis is out, at least until January. And you're trying to make a splash in the summer of 2019. So I get where you're coming from. You're not wrong, but let me put a negative spin on it. Let me be the devil's advocate. What if Porzingis doesn't come back, right? And while he's waiting to come back because he's trying to recover, Michael Porter's durability isn't what you'd like it to be, and he can't go because the NBA game is rougher and tougher, more physical, and obviously longer with superior athletes going up against him. So from a physical standpoint, it could be problematic. What about that reality? And you have to have that lurking over your franchise going into the summer of 2019.
I'll answer that question. You know what that means for us? We're right back in the same position we are now in the draft lottery, hoping to get the number 1 pick. Nothing would change. But if it goes the opposite way, if you let me be the angel on the opposite side of the devil's shoulder, and Michael Porter Jr. turns out to be a superstar, now we have a superstar center, or in Porzingis, who's a unicorn, who could play pretty much any position on the court.
Okay.
And then you have Michael Porter Jr., a 6'10 kid who could stroke the 3.
All right, but what if Kevin Knox does that for you?
Yeah, but you know what, Steve? Kevin Knox, I understand he's 19 years old. I'm not devastated by that pick personally. I would have took Mikal Bridges.
Look, Anthony, I'm running out of time. Here's the deal. With Kevin Knox, folks are not crucifying him. What they're saying about Kevin Knox, the biggest thing that they're saying about Kevin Knox negatively has nothing to do with his game. They're questioning the want-it factor, the fact that he never really seemed to go out there and get it with the exception of his performance at West Virginia. That's what they're saying about him.
When you're the New York Knicks, I know you're running out of time. I appreciate you giving me so much time. But when you're the New York Knicks, and you just can't get anybody worth anything to come to your franchise, and you have the opportunity at 9 to pick a kid who could have been number 1, barring an injury, you have to take that shot
I got you. I appreciate the call, Anthony. Thank you. Let's go to Doc. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Doc? How are you?
Hey, how's it going, Stephen? How you doing today?
I'm all right. Floor is yours. Go ahead.
Good. I've been listening to you all week, man. Love the show. And what I got a comment about the Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, the Spurs, they did a good job in the draft last night. And I think what they're doing with the Kawhi Leonard thing, they're trying to salvage it. And I think the uncle is not looking out for the kid's best interest. And this is where I go with this. If you have to trade Kawhi Leonard, and you tell me what you think about it, I would try to trade him to Washington and get John Wall.
Stop right there. Kawhi Leonard is 26 years old. He turns 27 exactly a week from today. Kawhi Leonard will turn 27 years of age. He has looked the San Antonio Spurs and Greg Popovich in their face and told them he wants out. He wants to be traded. The report is L.A., which is his hometown. Why we got to blame his uncle for that? Is he a child, a toddler? He don't have the power and ability to make his own decisions? This isn't him?
Well, yes, I don't think it's him, because the reason why I don't is because
he's 26 years old. What do you mean it's him? He's 26 years old, and he looked them in their face and told them how he feels. How can I put that on his uncle?
We can guide our kids to do certain things, even
but he's
when
a
they're
man.
Grown.
But he's a man. Ultimately, he's held accountable.
Oh, the buck does fall on him eventually, yes. But when we try to give our kids advice, we try to tell our kids the right and wrong things to do, even when they are adults.
And because they're adults, how many times do they listen to you?
They very far and few.
Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you. So go ahead, but continue.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But if they got to get rid of him, I would try to make a deal with Washington that trades him into the East. You get Wall and Kelly Oubre back, even though it's a little less. But you get Wall. Wall would be the linchpin, because
wait a minute.
He's a souped up.
Wait a minute, Doc. Do you give up John Wall for a player that's going to stay with you for 1 year before he's a free agent and free to go to L.A.?
Okay, this is where I was looking at it with Washington. Washington would be willing to do a sign and trade with L.A. and get back players, because I don't think Wall and Beal can coexist. And now you get some talent back to replace Beal, and you're still able to compete in the East.
Doc, that's interesting. I can't rule that out. That's a good point now. That is a good point, because if you engage in a sign and trade, the assets that the San Antonio Spurs would not want, the Lakers would. So if you got something from Washington, that would be great. But here's your problem. I don't think the San Antonio Spurs will want to bring John Wall there in favor of DeJounte Murray. Because I'm not saying that DeJounte Murray is better than Wall yet, because that would be sacrilegious. What I'm saying is that DeJounte Murray has learned under their system, their tutelage. He's a team player. There's no locker room turmoil where he's concerned. And I think that would appeal to San Antonio more so than John Wall. But I get your point, and it's not bad. I understand what your thinking was, and I appreciate it, Doc. Thank you so much. Doc is not off kilter there. Made a valid point. Very valid point. Got to give credit where credit is due there, buddy. 888, say ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. He's basically highlighting how you might not be able to do something with Kawhi Leonard because of what you want in return for his services in San Antonio. But move him somewhere else for 1 year, knowing he's going to leave for L.A. And they may want the assets that L.A. is offering as opposed to you. Problem is, Kawhi would have to bite. And he'd have to tell you he's willing to stay. And once he becomes an unrestricted free agent, he'd be willing to engage in the sign and trade. That's a risky proposition for a team to take, especially with Kawhi Leonard and his uncle. More of your calls on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Plus, I'm going to get into Jameis Winston and why his career in the NFL may very well be in jeopardy. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
The NFL, I need to switch from the NBA draft to this. The NFL, having completed its investigations into allegations that Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Jameis Winston groped an Uber driver, the NFL will be issuing a 3-game suspension to Winston for violating its personal conduct policy, according to our very own Adam Schefter. Winston is yet to be informed of the official punishment, though. Winston was never arrested or charged with the crime for his alleged incident, but the NFL's personal conduct policy is broad and does not carry the same burden of proof as the criminal justice system. According to Jeff Cameron of ESPN Radio, the suspension doesn't necessarily mean that the NFL found Winston guilty of the allegations. Quote, what he'll be suspended over is a failure to report. This is what I do know. The Winston camp is prepared for the NFL to levy a suspension of some kind. Players are obligated, for those of you who don't know, to report any incident that would be a violation of the NFL's personal conduct policy, which reads, quote, clubs and players are obligated to promptly report any matter that comes to their attention through, for example, victim or witness reports, law enforcement or media reports that may constitute a violation of this policy. This obligation to report is broader than simply reporting an arrest. It requires reporting to the league any incident that comes to the club's or players' attention which, if the allegations were true, would constitute a violation of the personal conduct policy. Says here also in the article, however, at the Tampa Times, Rick Stroud disputes that, saying Winston's failure to report the incident is not a factor in the suspension. He said Winston would be suspended for violating the NFL's player conduct policy and not for failure to report the incident. That's where we are. Let me say this. Jameis Winston deserves the 3-game suspension. Matter of fact, wouldn't bother me if the team intervened and added additional games. See, ladies and gentlemen, the problem here is the weakness on the part of the National Football League. Nothing else. It's not complicated. It truly is not complicated. Jameis Winston, for better or worse, is essentially being convicted in a court of public opinion because of his past transgressions. The fact that he was once accused of sexual assault and ultimately that case was settled out of court. The fact that he spoke to a group of kids talking about how a woman should be silent and all of this other stuff. I mean, his reputation precedes him. And so when this latest incident comes up, even though it supposedly, allegedly, purportedly happened in November 16, in November of 2016, by the way, but BuzzFeed revealed it almost over a year later. I think the incident happened in March of 2016, and BuzzFeed reported it in November of 2017. So that's a year and a half later, which prompted the NFL's investigation. My thing is very, very simple. Why the hell are you in this situation? Why did you find yourself in this situation with all that you've been through it, all that you've overcome, knowing how the NFL is? Why you? Of all people, why you? That's the question that needs to be asked to Jameis Winston. See, to me, the NFL makes it complicated because they conduct their own thorough investigation and they have the mindset that, you know what, we did an investigation and our findings lead us to conclude blah, 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 blah. Not good enough. What did it say? What did you find out? Let us know. Make him have a press conference and address it if you have to. He ain't going to jail. Maybe, just maybe, if you didn't pacify all of these damn athletes and you made them stand front and center and answer questions, since they ain't going to jail, right? Maybe that probing, that interrogation would be such a nuisance, such an annoyance, and something they couldn't hide behind their lawyers or the team PR department or anything like that. Maybe that would serve as a dissuasive measure for finding themselves in these situations. Just a thought. But because everything has to have layers of detachments attached to it, and people are allowed to hide, makes it easier for transgressions to take place. Ever thought about that? Just a thought. In the end, what it comes down to is this. The NFL doesn't need to apologize for anything. They need to just be grown enough to say, look, we're the league, we're private industry, and damn it, you're going to play in our league. You don't impugn our reputation. Because if you do that, it's going to affect our bottom line. And if you affect our bottom line, we're going to affect yours. Very, very simple. They did it with Big Ben Roethlisberger. He was never arrested, but they suspended him 6 games and reduced it to 4. They've done it before. They could do it again. People need to learn better. The NFL will be included in that. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Hour number 2 up next. Head coach for the Dallas Mavericks, Rick Carlisle, with his new draft pick. He's up next with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio. It is my honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line. He is the head coach, the championship head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, won an NBA championship a few years ago. He is with me right now after last night's big deal on draft night. The one and only Rick Carlisle, head coach for the Dallas Mavericks. He's right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Coach? How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, Stephen A.? So great to be with you again, brother.
Man, same here, buddy. Always great to talk to you. Talk to me about last night. You guys moved up. You had the 5th pick in the draft. You swapped pick with the Atlanta Hawks, forfeited a future first-round pick in the process just to get your hands on this guy, Doncic. Talk to me about why you guys made that move and how great you're feeling about it.
Well, we do feel great about it. This is a guy that Donnie Nelson felt was the best player in the draft for us. And so, at certain points in the last week to 10 days, it looked like there might even be a chance he'd fall to us at 5 because, the draft was so strong in the top 5. And then it became pretty clear in the last day and a half that if we were going to get him, we were going to have to move up to at least number 3. And so there was a lot of talk with Atlanta, a lot of banter back and forth on deals. And, finally, as DeAndre Ayton was getting chosen with the first pick, the deal was consummated between Donnie Nelson and Travis Schlenk, and then then Mark Cuban checked in with Mr. Wrestler. They were texting and then had a quick phone call to confirm everything, and so we trade a protected pick in the future, and we basically move up to get Doncic, and then they move down to get Trae Young, who they really like. So my feeling is I think it's a great trade for both teams. I think Doncic is a guy that's very unusual because he has terrific size at 6'7" or 6'8", and he is a great playmaker. And if you look at his career to this point in Europe, he's accomplished everything there is to accomplish. He's been the MVP of all the leagues. He's won all the championships. And he's only 19 years old. And so we feel he has a long and fruitful career ahead of him, and it's going to be my job to take him from, the international courts onto the NBA courts, and we're going to have to, move him along at the right pace so that his career is good not only at the beginning, but that he keeps getting better and better and better.
Coach, I remember when the draft lottery was first determined, and it was going to be Phoenix number 1, Sacramento number 2, obviously Atlanta 3, Memphis 4, you guys 5. When they talked about Doncic, they talked about him potentially being the number 1 pick ahead of Ayton, and then obviously if it wasn't Ayton, it was going to be him at number 2. That was the initial talk, and I'm wondering, could you slice his game, break it down for me? What is so special about this kid's game? I know he's poised. I know he's a winner because he's going against NBA competition that is going over to Europe, so we know he's been tried and tested. But break down his game and some of the positives about it and why so many people have been raving about this guy for so long.
Well, he is today's quintessential multi-position player. I really believe he could play any of four positions. He could play the point, the 2, the 3, or the 4. I actually think his most comfortable situation is when he is the point guard and he is seeing people and moving the ball and keeping himself in motion. He's a very joyful player from the standpoint that he loves to pass first. He's a great scorer, but his vision of the floor kind of carries the day with how he plays the game. And, he's got great skill. He's got long-range shooting ability. He drives it well. He can finish. His playmaking and passing ability is really savant-like for a guy that's 6'7". And again, you look at his age, 19 years old, and what he's accomplished. It's really quite remarkable. And so if you want to compare him to other international players that have had those kinds of high-level impact careers overseas, names that would come to mind would be Drazen Petrovic, Tony Kukoc, Manu Ginobili, were guys that have some of the elements, or I should say he has some of the elements of those guys' games. But the number one thing is this guy's been an amazing winner over there. And so, hey, if you're in a rebuild like we are, you got to have guys that are winners. And we felt like taking him with the 3rd pick and then getting Jalen Brunson with the 33rd pick was a great start.
Talking to Rick Carlisle, head coach for the Dallas Mavericks, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Coach, you talked about transitioning him from European play to the NBA game. Could you dissect for us how a coach has to go about doing that? What are some of the specific changes that guys are going to have to adapt to? I don't know whether it's going to be difficult or not, but what are those specific changes that guys are going to have to adapt to when you talk about being playing in Europe compared to playing in the NBA?
Well, number one, the game is different. I mean, the NBA game is a longer game at 48 minutes. The three-point line is further out. And the players are better. They're faster. They're more athletic. You're not seeing any LeBron Jameses or Steph Currys or Kevin Durant's, playing over in the EuroLeague. I mean, they have some great players over there, but you get over here, I mean, this is a different breed of animal that you're going up against. And so, whereas in Europe, you do have a long season, and the schedule has a grueling element to it. They're playing 2 games a week. And in the NBA, we're playing an average of 3 or 4 games a week. And so, we're playing 100 games at a higher level with, a greater number of minutes per game, with these better athletes coming at him. So I think one of the things we're going to have to do is see where he is kind of with functional strength. I don't know what kind of program they had over there in terms of day-to-day maintenance of strength, balance, core, all that stuff. That stuff is really important for your endurance and to lengthen your career. And you say, well, okay, the kid's 19, he's going to bounce back from any of this kind of stuff. No, it's not like that. Hey, just ask Dennis Smith Jr. I mean, he came into this thing last year, and he learned an awful lot about how important it was to take care of your body and to fall in love with the weight room, and so that as the season goes along, you can get stronger mentally and physically, and that that stuff's a big part of it. I think we're going to have to monitor his minutes closely. This year, Dennis played about 29 minutes a game. We felt that was, what was the right amount for him, coming off of basically 1 year of college, and then he had an ACL 2 years before, or a year and a half before, and he did great with it, And so I think those are the main factors, and I think another thing that we're going to have to be very mindful of is, this summer with the summer league stuff. I mean, look, he finished his season 3 days ago,
Wow.
and so
Yeah.
I don't think it's realistic to say that, hey, the guy's going to jump in and play, a full schedule of the summer league. So I don't know to what degree he's going to participate in the games or even the live practices. But I do know he's going to start learning about things that he can do to kind of tune his body up, begin the process of strengthening his body for the long haul of the NBA.
We're talking to Rick Carlisle, head coach for the Dallas Mavericks, who's got Luka Doncic out of Europe. I mean, this guy is supposedly incredibly special and obviously special enough to the Dallas Mavericks since they moved up in the draft to get their hands on him. With that being said, obviously anytime somebody talks about the Mavs, they're talking about Dirk Nowitzki, who's a future Hall of Famer, one of the great players we have ever seen in the NBA, and obviously arguably the greatest player ever coming out of Europe. When you consider the fact that this guy just turned 40 years of age, Coach, I mean, he's approaching the tail end of his career, just averaging 12 points per game last season. Is Doncic the kind of guy that's going to prolong the career of a Dirk Nowitzki, or just make it easier for him to ultimately say goodbye? What do you see transpiring with Dirk Nowitzki in the immediate future, that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if this is going to be Dirk's last season. I do know that 21 seasons with one franchise will be an NBA record. The most seasons with a single franchise to this point is Dirk and Kobe Bryant at 20 years. Kobe with 20 with the Lakers, Dirk obviously 20 with the Mavs. So I think this is an important milestone for Dirk from that perspective. But categorically speaking, we've got to lower our dependence on Dirk, and we've been doing it in the last 2 or 3 years. Harrison Barnes has stepped up. He's been our go-to guy. Dennis Smith, was a 15-point-a-game scorer last year and was really good at the end of the season and got better. And, now we have a third guy that can be a playmaker, a scorer, and, it can be a guy that really helps make guys better on our roster. And Steve, really, if you think about it, that's been maybe the greatest thing that Dirk's done in his career. Because he's on the floor and shoots the ball so great, whoever's guarding him is virtually hugging him all over the floor. So, if you're playing against New Orleans, Anthony Davis is guarding him, and, it's keeping Anthony Davis away from the basket. And so it makes the other 4 guys on the court better. And so, but look, guys can't play forever. And so, my wish this year is that, we can big number of minutes for Dirk, that he can stay healthy again as well as he did last year. I mean, he was on track to play 81 games until we shut him down to do this minor ankle surgery. Right. And then at the end of the year, hey, we'll see where we are. He may decide to keep going.
I'm wondering about you guys in free agency, too, because obviously you're a great coach. You know how we all feel about Mark Cuban. Dallas is a great city. You guys got some cap space. I've often wondered, how come the marquee free agent can't get attracted to Dallas? We've been talking about LeBron and Paul George and everybody else ad nauseum. You got Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, Jimmy Butler, and others that are expected to be available next summer. What about Dallas being a major player in free agency, not just the draft? What do you say to those who question or have those questions about the Dallas Mavericks?
Well, going forward, I think what we're doing here is we're putting together a core group of dynamic young players that people in free agency that are available in free agency are going to look at and say, you know what? That's a group that I'd like to play with. I mean, who wouldn't want to play with, a guy, a creator and a penetrator like Dennis Smith, a spacer and playmaker like Doncic, and a guy like Barnes who can, play the 3, play the 4, and is a 20-point scorer. I just think part of rebuilding a championship team is that, unfortunately, you have to get bad, which we've been the last couple of years, but the fruit of those difficult seasons is, the 9th pick last year for Smith and then the 3rd pick this year for Doncic. And now we've got to move this thing forward. But, looking into the future, I think you build a core group of dynamic young players, which is what we're doing. And the free agency thing will take care of itself.
Before I let you get on out of here, Coach Rick Carlisle, I got to ask you, I know that you don't have time to pay attention to too many other teams or whatever, but the draft was very, very intriguing last night. Any pickups in the NBA draft that stood out in your mind, or any players that got picked up by other teams that really, really stood out for you, that made you raise an eyebrow and say, this could be really, really interesting? Any thoughts?
our season was over on April 10th. And so, yeah, from April 10th to June 21st, that's a long time in NBA years. I mean, it's like light years. And so I've been studying the draft harder than I ever have as a head coach because of where we were picking. And I got so familiar with the draft that I'm really not shocked at anything that happened out there. What's going to be interesting for me is to see some of the players that were drafted in the early 20s through the late 30s, because a lot of those guys were guys that were very kind of interchangeable. They could have been, a guy in the mid-20s could have easily been in the mid-30s. I want to see which of those guys, end up becoming big-time contributors on teams. Coaching will have a lot to do with it. Fit will have a lot to do with it. And then, on draft night, you've got to have a gut feel as a general manager or an owner or whoever your decision maker is, because it's an inexact science. I mean, there is no way to truly quantify everything that goes on when it comes down to drafting players in any sport.
Coach Rick Carlisle, really appreciate your time, buddy. I know you're getting ready to handle some business there with the team, but thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the show, buddy. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Congratulations, too.
All right. Always a pleasure, Steve. Take care.
Thanks a lot, buddy. The one and only Rick Carlisle right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Hey, listen, you got a young guy. If Doncic is what they say he's supposed to be, along with the way Dennis Smith Jr. looked last year, all right, and if Harrison Barnes continues to grow and develop, he is a champion after all, won a championship at Golden State. If those things continue to happen, again, you're going to build with young guys, but they're still going to have to get something in free agency eventually if you're the Dallas Mavericks, because Dirk Nowitzki's about to get on up out of here. But then again, you got a great coach in Rick Carlisle who clearly knows what he's doing. You got some young players. Let's see what it pans out to be. Let's just see. No question about it. They're happy they got Doncic. You can hear that in Rick Carlisle's voice. No doubt about that. Tell you something else, too. Rick Carlisle, 2 years in Detroit, 61% of his games. Rick Carlisle, head coach in Indiana, won 55% of his games. 10 seasons rather in Dallas. He's won 54% of his games, NBA champion in 2010, 2011. We'll see what happens. I know I believe in him. But this kid, Doncic, I got to see it. I got to see it to know what time it is. I really, really do. By the way, 30 for 30 podcast have returned. Subscribe to 30 for 30 podcast right now in the Listen tab on the ESPN app or on Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by Delta, where it's our goal to connect your life in the air to your life on the ground. 16 minutes past hour number 2 back here in the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Before I go to break, I got to tell you something right now. I got to completely shift gears because we talked about the NBA draft. We've been still talking about the NBA draft. I had to talk a little bit about Jameis Winston and the trouble that he found himself in because that's unavoidable. But I got to encourage everybody switching to Major League Baseball. I really, really got to encourage folks. If you get an opportunity, you need to go to today's New York Daily News. You need to go to today's New York Daily News and read this outstanding column by the great Bill Madden. Just a baseball aficionado, if ever there was one. He's a former colleague when I was working at the New York Daily News, a man whose work I've admired for many, many years. His absolute historian on the sport of baseball, still writing fantastic columns, always knows what he's talking about, always on his grind. And it's just a pleasure to read his work, and I would encourage everybody to continue to do so. Any chance you get, you care about the game of baseball, you love this sport, you read Bill Madden. It's just that simple. Pretty damn close to the gospel, I might add. And he wrote a very, very interesting column today about Major League Baseball because he talked about how baseball is hurting itself. Its ratings have dropped. Attendance, has dropped about 8.6%. God knows what the ratings are. And he talked about how the strikeouts are killing the game. There's a graph here that I'll read to you that he says because it's very profound. He said, we are inexorably, that means unyieldingly, heading for the first season in baseball history in which there will be more strikeouts than hits. As of Wednesday, there had been 18,365 hits as opposed to 18,815 strikeouts. And the gap widens by the day. The average 17.12 strikeouts per game, according to the Elias Sports Bureau, is the highest in baseball history and has increased steadily since 2008. The present overall .245 batting average is the lowest in the major leagues since 1972. 1972. Then he highlighted some guys. Got into Giancarlo Stanton. All right? What did he say about Stanton? The all-or-nothing slugger. That's what he labeled him. Hard to justify the $25 million per year salary. According to the Elias Sports Bureau, the swing and miss count of 214 by Stanton was second in the majors to only the Texas Rangers' Joey Gallo. Stanton had been hitting .221 with 24 strikeouts and just one home run with runners in scoring position. Overall, he has 70 hits, albeit 18 homers, and 100 strikeouts. 70 hits, 100 strikeouts. He brought up Chris Davis with the Orioles a couple of years ago. How he led the league with 47 home runs and 288 strikeouts. But he talked about how Baltimore felt the need to still sign him to a 7-year, $161 million contract. So little regard for the fact he was a strikeout victim, a third of the time. In 2016, he struck out a league-leading 219 times, as opposed to just 125 hits. The alarming trend got worse last year, 98 hits, 195 strikeouts. And finally last week, with Chris Davis hitting 150, with 86 strikeouts and 31 hits, the Orioles reluctantly benched Davis despite his team-leading $23 million salary. We're talking about Bryce Harper. Everybody's talking about he might be a Yankee. Scott Boras' agent saying he could be the first player approaching $500 million. Or expected him to get at least $400 million. And Harper's trending in the wrong direction as a strikeout machine. As of Wednesday, he swung 197 times. And his misses were third behind Gallo and Stanton only. He's batting .209 with a league-leading 19 homers, but for the third straight year has more strikeouts, which is 72, than hits, 53. Back in 2015, his MVP year, he hit .330 with 172 hits, a league-leading 42 homers, but only 131 strikeouts. This is bad, y'all. This is bad. When Rob Manfred, commissioner of Major League Baseball, took over in 2013, they were talking about pitchers during a game. Pitchers, not pitches, pitchers. Individuals. They were averaging 7.9 pitches a game. You know, with all these pitching changes, it's going up steadily to 8.5 today. That's what it says. The pitching changes, of course, are another prime factor in the rise of strikeouts, with batters now facing a steady diet of 98 to 100 mile per hour relievers from the sixth inning on. Major League Baseball better do something, because with the NFL and the NBA growing more and more, baseball is increasingly getting left behind. Outstanding column by Bill Madden. But what else is new? It's what he does. It's what it does. It's what happens when you're the best. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's the number to call up. Back to your phone calls on the NBA draft, on Jameis Winston, on what I just highlighted about Major League Baseball, on Rick Carlisle, head coach of the Dallas Mavericks, saying what he had to say about this kid out of Europe named Doncic. All that and more up next with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that, because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Richard. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Richard? How are you?
How you doing, Stephen A? I talked to you during the playoffs. You said two things must happen. Jordan Clarkson must hit some jump shots, and Nance Jr. must be a version of a poor
Thompson. Neither of those things happened, so turn the page. There's a rumor going around that if Dwight Howard's contract is bought out, there might be a possibility that Cleveland would take a look at him.
He doesn't want to be. He does not want to be in Cleveland without LeBron James. Dwight Howard actually would like to be with the Warriors.
Okay. Yeah, but what type of Dwight Howard are you going to get? That's the question.
I think what you get is what you see. I think a guy that's limited offensively. He's good enough to be better than solid. Definitely defensively in terms of rebounding, blocking shots, etc., being a defensive presence. Offensively, he's limited in what he can do because he has no perimeter game whatsoever. He's suspect at the free throw line as well. And his post game in terms of his back to the basket play is not that surreal offensively. I think he's a double waiting to happen. I think Dwight Howard could give you 17 and 12 a night with max effort, but there is no question in my mind that if he were in Golden State, for example, he can give you what you get from JaVale McGee or Jaja Pachulia. I have no doubt about that.
Okay. Well, your Yankees are hitting the ball out the park, and they're on a collision course, maybe with Houston again. Good luck to your team, Stephen. Take care.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Take it easy. Let's go to Jay in Denver. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Jay?
Hey, Stephen A. How you doing?
I'm all right. Talk to me. What's up?
No, I'm just letting you know, you were right about earlier. It's a proud day in Denver. I'm proud to be a Denver native and a Denver Nugget. Got Michael Porter Jr., Jordan, Jamal Murray, Jokic, Will Burton, and the rest of the squad. Definitely, it's going to be a good look. We on a come up. But my question is this: with Sexton going to Cleveland, what else would Cleveland have to acquire to convince LeBron to stay?
I don't think it has anything to do with players. I think LeBron has reached the stage and point in his career where his family and loved ones are going to determine where he's going to be. I don't think it has anything to do with that. Even without all of that, they went to the finals. Philly's on the come up. Yes. Boston's on the come up. Absolutely true. He goes to L.A. He's not going to be the favorite. Houston and Golden State are going to have an edge over him. Doesn't matter. I think that LeBron James is at a point in time in his career where if he's going to pursue a championship, he's going to go to somebody that's a bona fide favorite with him on it. And if it's not about the championships, it's just about the best situation for him. I think his wife, his mom, and his children are going to make that determination.
Gotcha.
All right.
Appreciate the call, bro.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mark, you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up?
Hey, Stephen, how you doing today?
I'm all right. Go ahead, buddy.
You just mentioned Dwight Howard wanting to be with the Warriors. If he can give the Warriors maybe 15 and 10 night in and night out, and then they sit him down in the fourth quarter and go with the small lineup, at that point, that's been their only soft point. I don't think wherever LeBron James goes is not going to make a difference.
I think you're looking at the wrong thing. I don't think Dwight has to average double digits for the Golden State Warriors. He just needs to be capable of doing it when they need him to. But for the most part, they won't need him to most nights. I'm not saying, and by the way, I'm not saying that I have any indication that Golden State wants him. I'm telling you, I know Dwight's camp, and I know Dwight. Dwight wants to be in Golden State. That's what I'm telling you.
One quick question for you.
Yes.
One quick question. With the whole LeBron James thing, I think there's one issue that everybody's forgetting, and I know you've been around a long time. Father Time is undefeated, and it's not gradual. One day it just hits you like it did Jordan, and then you're seeing Kobe deterioration. Would you be worrying about that with LeBron James if you committed to him for a period of time in his 16, 17, 18 season?
No, and here's why. Because even LeBron falling off is still good for 20 and 10 a night. He's 6'9", 260, with a requisite of skills and the highest basketball IQ you can find. The combination of those things, along with his experience, is enough to virtually guarantee that he could average 20 and 10 in his 18th season in the NBA, regardless of any physical drop-off. So I wouldn't be concerned, A, and B, there is no question he's box office. He pays for himself.
And I know you wanted Trae Young for the Knicks, but my last question about Trae Young, is Atlanta truly committed to him, or why would they take a similar guard in the second round? Is that insurance, you think?
Well, it's a combination of insurance, but you also want somebody that's box office. Let's face reality. The ATL is looking for boxers. Remember when their owner got in a little bit of trouble because they were talking about the music that was being played and the venue that they had was catering to a specific audience? And essentially, for lack of a better, he never said this, but I'm going to paraphrase what the mentality was. He wasn't interested in black appeal because a lot of their product was catering to their African American audience. He wasn't interested in black appeal. He was interested in mass appeal. He didn't want black money. He wanted everybody's money. So it's one of those situations where if you have a large segment of your populace that's out there that's not spending money on your product, how do we get those folks to spend money on our product? By getting a product in there that is with box office appeal. Atlanta hasn't had that since Dominique Wilkins. I don't think we really appreciate and realize Atlanta has been a good team. Atlanta has been a solid team. Atlanta has had its years where they've made the playoffs. But a simple question for you, Mark. Tell me the box office attraction that they have had since Dominique Wilkins.
Has not been any.
It hasn't been one. Of all of these cities, Atlanta is the one city that has not had a box office attraction. Now, does that make any sense? Does that make any sense to you? No, man. I'm from Philly, and I've been tracking you for years, man. I appreciate you. Got to run. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Back with your calls to close out the show in a minute with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
Let's go to Michael. You're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Stephen A. About this whole Kawhi situation. Kind of wondering, doesn't something just seem off that a player usually not known to speak to the media or talk on that much? Now everybody seems to know he wants to go to Los Angeles and he wants to do.
No, you can't go by that. Stuff. You can't go by that because he still must have talked to one person. It got out that he told the San Antonio Spurs that he wants out, and then everybody knows. It's not like he talked to everybody. It's not like he's talking much. He made one statement. And that's he wants out. And even that was leaked to a particular reporter. And then after that, they just let us know that he told Greg Popovich he doesn't want out. That's all.
But don't you think if he's told Greg Popovich and Popovich has sat down with a meeting for him, the Spurs still aren't looking for a trade to Los Angeles, don't you think that maybe Pop knows something that nobody else knows?
I'm quite sure Pop knows something that nobody else knows. That's his coach. That's the man he's communicating with directly. But it doesn't negate the fact that Kawhi Leonard wants out because he wants to be back home in L.A.
Just this doesn't seem like right, you know? Somebody who usually is just quiet all of a sudden and now.
Where have you been? Where have you been? Listen, will you stop calling, wasting my time with this? Oh, here's somebody called and it's leaked. Let's deal with the issue at hand. He played 9 games last year. There was a players-only meeting where they confronted him to challenge whether or not his injury was as legitimate as he claimed. And the issue that you're calling up about is the fact that it's publicized, that people don't know. People know all of a sudden that's an aberration, so something must be awry. Why can't you deal with the reality that he's not denying at all that he wants out?
So what would be your reason? Your reason is that he just wants to go play in L.A., correct?
Yes. He wants to go home in L.A. That's where he's from. He wants to go home. Let's see what happens.
But he wants to leave.
Have a nice day. Have a nice day. See, that's somebody, ladies and gentlemen, that's just looking for an excuse to talk and say he was on the radio. He didn't have any real questions because these are all things that have been answered ad nauseum over the last week or two. Don't waste my time. I don't play that. Let's go to Rob. You're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Stephen A., I'm going to ask you just like you asked that caller from Atlanta, rather, that was talking about Atlanta. What was the last box office player New York had that we had, the Knicks? And please don't say Melo.
I was going to say, actually, when Melo first arrived, he was box office. Didn't last long, but when he first arrived, he was box office. And that is without question. Nick's business department would tell you that. He was box office when he first arrived. Prior to him, Ewing. And I never really considered Ewing that big a box office attraction. There's never been a Michael Jordan, a Dominique Wilkins, or anybody like that. No, there hasn't been that in the Knicks franchise. You're right.
And would you say Porzingis can be box office?
I think so, if they win. I think so.
Get us at least out of the. I'd say he got to get us at least out of the first round of the playoffs to even remotely consider him box office.
Fair enough.
And he hasn't done that yet.
Fair enough. But he's relatively young. Not going to hold him accountable for that, particularly with the lack of parts that he's had around him. But I hear where you're coming from, Rob. I can't deny that. Thanks a lot for the call, bro. Roman, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Well, what's up, Stephen A?
How are you, buddy?
Doing good. I was turning into your station about 10, 15 minutes ago, and I called in, and I told the guy I wanted to talk to you about Lonnie Walker, and he said earlier, he said in the show that he was a steal of the draft, and
I said he may be. I'm not sure, but he may be. I love the fact that he was picked up by the Spurs because they're good at developing talent. I like Lonnie Walker.
Absolutely. I feel like he couldn't go to no better team than that. And, in my personal opinion, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like he's the best all-around guard in this draft, to be honest. So I would take him over
I wouldn't know.
Young.
I wouldn't know. I've got to see it first.
Yeah, I got you. All right, man.
Thanks for the call, Roman. Let's go to Yusuf. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Yusuf.
How you doing, Stephen A?
I'm all right. Go ahead, buddy.
I just want to say, talk about Trae Young. I think I like Trae Young. I just don't think he'll change life in Atlanta necessarily. And I also want to address the Steph Curry comparison.
Okay.
I think I get why they make the comparison because, you see him hitting these deep shots and all that.
Okay.
I just don't think it's a fair comparison just because, not based off Curry's accomplishments, but I just think when you
stop right there. When the comparisons to Steph Curry are made, it's made based on Steph Curry coming out of Davidson and how he looked his first couple of years in the NBA. Nobody's trying to compare Trae Young to the Steph Curry that exists now. You're talking about the Steph Curry that came into the league in 2009. Okay? That's what you're thinking about. Appreciate the call. Andrew, you're live with Stephen A. You got 30 seconds. Go.
Hey, Stephen A. Thank you for taking my call. So I got 2 points. First, I'll make it quick. The NFL point, I think they're hurting their own bottom line. I really feel like there's going to be a lockout once the CBA is over, and the NFL players are really going to remember the Tom Brady suspension, the Ezekiel Elliott suspension, this suspension. I don't know. I think the NFL is really hurting their own bottom line.
Got you. What's your second point on the MLB?
And then my second point on MLB is back in the day, there weren't guys who were consistently throwing 100 miles an hour. You have the superstars who were doing it, Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens. Nowadays, you have guys coming up from the minors who are throwing 100, a lot harder to hit the ball. So I think these guys are really just guessing and trying to hit it out of the park.
Yeah, you're probably right. And you know what? They're also trying to focus on hitting the home runs. The bunt is out of the game, aiming for singles and beyond. Everybody's trying to hit for the fences because there's more money for the hitters. That's what they're thinking about, cashing in. We'll holler at you after the weekend. Enjoy the weekend. Until then, peace and love.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.